She was only 17. Bright, full of energy and in love. On a quiet April evening, she was dropped off at her boyfriend's home in Inkster, and from that moment, no one ever saw her alive again. For weeks, her family searched, calling, posting, praying. But the truth was already sealed away, inside a plastic bin hidden in a parked vehicle miles from home. What began as young love ended in deception, betrayal, and death. Now, a mother and her son stand accused, not just of murder but of weaving a web of lies to hide it. This is the story of 17-year-old Lled Thomas, and how love, trust, and innocence turned fatal. By the end of this video, you'll see how a mother may have helped cover up the killing, and how one small tip changed everything. 17-year-old Lled Thomas grew up in the heart of Michigan, a bright, spirited teen from the Detroit area whose smile could light up every room she walked into. She loved music, fashion, and her family, the kind of girl who shared laughter easily and dreamed about her future beyond high school. Friends describe her as caring, trusting, and full of promise, someone who believed in love maybe too deeply. In the months before her disappearance, Lled had been in a relationship with 23-year-old Jalen Pendergrass, a man several years older living in Inkster, a small city west of Detroit. To some, their bond looked like young love trying to survive life's challenges. But beneath the surface there were tensions, moments of distance, arguments, and uneasy silence. The kind of cracks that often start small, until they break everything apart. Family members would later recall that Lled cared deeply for Jalen. She visited often, trusted him, and wanted the relationship to work, even when others had doubts. It wasn't unusual for her to spend time at his home, but that April, something felt different. There were fewer calls, strange delays in messages, and an edge in his tone that those close to her couldn't quite explain. On the evening of April 5, 2025, Lled's sister dropped her off at Jalen's home in Inkster. A quiet street, a modest house. Nothing seemed out of place. Lled stepped out of the car, walked toward the door, and vanished into the night. That would be the last time anyone saw her alive. Her phone would later fall silent. Her social media, untouched. Days passed, and her family's concern grew from confusion to panic. What was Lled thinking in those final hours? Was she hopeful, believing the visit might fix what was broken? Or did she already sense danger, something dark waiting behind that door? From Detroit to Inkster, the distance between home and horror was just 15 miles. But for Lled Thomas, it became an unthinkable divide, one that her loved ones could never cross again. When Lled entered that home, she would never leave alive. But how did things go so terribly wrong? The morning after Lled Thomas was dropped off at her boyfriend's home, her family expected a text, a call, something. But April 6th came, and Lled never walked through the door. At first, they thought maybe she was just staying longer than planned. Maybe her phone had died or she was sleeping over. But by afternoon, that uneasy feeling turned into something heavier. Calls went straight to voicemail. Messages were left unanswered. And when hours became a full day, panic began to set in. Lled's mother and sister searched everywhere they could think of, calling friends, driving through familiar neighborhoods, checking her social media, hoping for any sign of movement. Nothing. It was as if the vibrant 17-year-old had simply disappeared into thin air. That evening, her family made it official. A missing persons report was filed with the Inkster Police Department. What started as worry was now a case. Detectives began their work immediately, retracing Lled's last known steps, beginning from that home in Inkster. Officers spoke with neighbors, checked traffic cameras, and reached out to the boyfriend, 23-year-old Jalen Pendergrass, who claimed to have last seen her leaving the house. But that story didn't add up. There was no camera footage showing Lled leaving. No witnesses saw her outside. And the more investigators dug, the less sense Jalen's timeline made. As the days passed, the search expanded. Inkster police called in help from Detroit Police, the FBI, and Michigan State Police, pooling resources to track cell phone pings, search nearby woods, and knock on doors in surrounding neighborhoods. Flyers went up. Volunteers joined in. The community held on to hope that maybe, just maybe, Lled was still alive somewhere. But with every lead came heartbreak. Tips poured in, supposed sightings, calls claiming to know something, but none led anywhere. One by one, they collapsed under scrutiny. Inside the police station, detectives built a board, names, photos, phone records, times. And one name kept reappearing, Jalen. But beside his, another soon surfaced, his mother, Charla Pendergrass. She had spoken to police several times, each time offering a different version of events. At this stage, no charges were filed. There was suspicion, yes, But suspicion alone couldn't close a case. There was no body, no weapon, no proof. Only a missing girl and a family desperate for answers. Detectives searched abandoned lots. They followed electronic trails. They spoke to anyone who might have seen the plastic bin that would later hold the truth. But in early April, no one knew what they were really looking for. Days turned into weeks. The posters began to fade under the spring rain. Hope fought against the quiet. And all the while, somewhere out there the answer waited, hidden in plain sight. Detectives had suspects, but no smoking gun. The missing puzzle piece remained just out of view. April 7th, 2 days after London Thomas vanished, a quiet phone call was made. It would be the moment that eventually cracked the case wide open. According to investigators, Jalen Pendergrass's mother, 44-year-old Charla Pendergrass, allegedly reached out to a friend that day. She needed help moving something, she said. A sealed plastic bin. Heavy. Oddly sealed. No explanation for what was inside. That friend would later tell detectives the request felt strange. But at the time, there was no reason to think it was anything more than a simple favor. Together they lifted the container, large, tightly closed and wrapped, and transported it away from the Inkster home. No one spoke much about it. No one asked what was inside. Over the next few days the container changed locations. By April 11th, it was placed inside a parked SUV, on Millard Street in Southfield, Michigan. To anyone passing by, it looked like an abandoned vehicle. But inside, sealed in that plastic bin, was the body of 17-year-old London Thomas. For 2 weeks, that SUV sat motionless. Spring rain fell. Days turned to nights. And while London's family continued their desperate search, her body remained hidden in plain sight, in a quiet neighborhood just outside Detroit. Then, on April 26th, investigators acted on a crucial tip. The Michigan State Police, alongside the FBI and local officers, executed a search of that parked SUV on Millard Street. When they pried open the doors and broke the seal on the container, the truth they had been chasing for weeks finally surfaced. Inside the plastic bin, officers found what they feared most: human remains later confirmed to be London Thomas. 17 years old. Missing for 3 weeks. Her life cut short, hidden away as if she could be forgotten. The vehicle had been sitting there for nearly 2 weeks. Neighbors said they thought it belonged to someone who'd left town. No one knew that the car and the bin inside it held the evidence that would unravel everything. When forensic teams examined the scene, every detail mattered. The positioning of the bin, the layers of wrapping, the airtight seal. Inside, the medical examiner would later find signs of asphyxia, the official cause of death. Manner, homicide. The condition of the remains, the lack of obvious trauma, it all pointed to something chilling. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. A death that required effort and time to conceal. Evidence from the SUV was collected piece by piece. DNA swabs, fingerprints, and items that hinted at who might have handled the bin. Every clue tightened the noose, bringing detectives closer to those responsible. Behind the sealed plastic, police didn't just find a crime. They found betrayal, hidden beneath the surface of a family's lies. But who would trap a life inside a bin? And why would the person helping move it be the mother of the suspect? When police uncovered London's body inside that plastic bin, the case that began as a desperate search for a missing teen suddenly shifted, from mystery to murder. And the focus turned sharply toward 2 people, 23-year-old Jalen Pendergrass and his mother, Charla Pendergrass. Jalen was no stranger to trouble. According to public court records, he already had a pending case in nearby Oakland County, facing charges for filing a false felony report. It wasn't a violent crime, but it painted a picture. Someone familiar with deception. Someone comfortable twisting the truth when under pressure. When investigators brought Jalen in for questioning after London's disappearance, he denied any involvement. He said she left his home alive. But something in his story didn't sit right with detectives. His tone. His gaps. The way his mother hovered close, controlling details, choosing words carefully. There was a pattern, one that prosecutors would later call a campaign to lie. Then there was Charla Pendergrass, 49 years old. To the outside world, she was a mother and caregiver. But behind closed doors, prosecutors now say she became her son's accomplice. Investigators believe Charla was the one who made that fateful phone call, the one asking a friend to help move the sealed plastic bin. They say she lied to detectives, hid evidence, misled investigators again and again. Prosecutors described her behavior not as panic, but as precision. She wasn't just protecting her son, They alleged she was orchestrating a cover-up. At her arraignment in Wayne County, Charla stood beside her son. Jalen was denied bond. Charla, meanwhile, was granted a staggering $5 million cash bond, tethered with GPS monitoring and banned from leaving Michigan. It was clear, authorities saw her as a key player, not just a bystander. In court, prosecutors accused Charla of repeatedly misleading investigators, a deliberate attempt to obstruct justice, even after knowing what had happened to London Thomas. They claimed she showed a willingness to be deceptive, words that would echo across the courtroom. Neighbors who knew the Pendergrasses described them as quiet, private. But as police pieced together phone records and surveillance footage, a more disturbing picture emerged. One of manipulation, secrecy, and loyalty taken to a deadly extreme. Was this the act of a mother blindly protecting her child? Or something darker, a shared crime driven by fear, control, or desperation? Inside that home, detectives believed there was tension. London's relationship with Jalen had grown unstable. Arguments, emotional pressure, possible jealousy. Charla, always nearby, may have known more than she ever admitted. Phone data placed Jalen near critical locations during the time London vanished. Charla's communications, too, showed gaps. Moments where calls stopped, messages were deleted, timelines blurred. To investigators, it wasn't just coincidence. It was choreography, a careful dance of lies meant to buy time. By mid-April, both Jalen and Charla were under intense scrutiny. And though they continued to deny any involvement, cracks began to show. Was Charla complicit from the very beginning? Or did Jalen pull her in after the fact, out of fear or guilt? Family loyalty can blur the lines between right and wrong. But as the case deepened, loyalty became the very thing that trapped them both. But their denials would soon crumble, piece by piece, under the weight of digital trails, witness accounts, and that friend's haunting testimony. The lies were beginning to unravel. As the days passed, detectives began connecting the fragments of a horrifying truth. London Thomas had vanished without a trace, but the lies surrounding her disappearance were starting to take shape, and one name kept surfacing: Charla Pendergrass. The first major breakthrough came from a single statement, from a friend of Charla's. According to investigators, on April 7, 2 days after London disappeared, Charla reached out to this friend in a call that would become the centerpiece of the entire case. She asked for help moving a large, sealed plastic bin. No details. No explanation. Just urgency. That same friend would later recall the bin being heavy, sealed tight, and out of place. By April 11th, the container had been relocated, this time into a parked SUV along Millard Street in Southfield, Michigan. The friend didn't know it then, but that favor would ultimately expose a chilling crime scene. From that moment, detectives knew someone had gone to great lengths to hide London's body. But when questioned, Charla claimed something entirely different. She told investigators she saw London leave the Inkster home on April 5th, alive. Detectives found no evidence to support that statement. No surveillance footage. No witnesses confirming London ever walked out. And no activity from London's phone after she entered that house. According to the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office, Charla's version of events began to collapse under scrutiny. Every interview brought new contradictions, changed details, missing timelines, statements that simply didn't align with the physical evidence. Charla was initially charged with lying to a peace officer, but that charge was later dropped. Not because investigators believed her, but because of a legal technicality. The officer she lied to was a federal agent, not officially defined as a peace officer under Michigan law. It was a narrow escape, but temporary. Behind the scenes, detectives were piecing together a digital trail, phone records, video surveillance, witness interviews, a web that kept pointing in one direction, back to Jalen and Charla Pendergrass. Every unanswered question seemed to orbit their home in Inkster. Video surveillance in nearby areas placed Jalen's movements close to critical moments of the disappearance. Charla's phone, meanwhile, appeared to go dark during key hours. No texts, no calls. To detectives, it wasn't silence. It was strategy. Even forensic specialists joined the effort, examining fibers, fingerprints, and trace evidence from the vehicle. Every swab, every print was part of a growing narrative, one of concealment and coordination. The prosecution would later describe Charla's behavior as an extended campaign to lie. Not a moment of panic, not a single bad decision, but a pattern, deliberate, controlled, and designed to protect her son. She claimed she wanted to help the investigation. But with each interview, the truth bent further away. And while detectives traced every call, every movement, one question lingered. Why would a mother go to such lengths to hide what her son had done? Behind closed doors, investigators reviewed timeline after timeline. The last confirmed sighting, the call for help, the hidden vehicle. Each step lined up with precision, too clean to be coincidence. By late April, the evidence chain was complete. The friend's testimony about the bin, the digital footprint connecting both Pendergrasses to the SUV, and the forensic confirmation of London's cause of death. The lies were collapsing, and the walls were closing in. Investigators no longer needed to speculate. Every path, every thread of evidence led back to Jalen and Charla. The phone records, the witness, the contradictions. It was all there, with every lie exposed and every trail pointing toward them. It was only a matter of time before charges were filed, and the truth behind London's final moments would finally begin to surface. By mid-October, more than 6 months after London Thomas's disappearance, the investigation had reached its breaking point. The evidence, the bin, the phone records, the witness testimony had all been laid out. And on October 17, 2025, the truth finally took legal form. The Wayne County Prosecutor's Office announced that Charla and Jalen Pendergrass were both being charged with second-degree murder and tampering with evidence in connection with the death of 17-year-old London Thomas. It was the moment London's family had waited for, and the moment the public began to fully grasp the horror of what had happened. Inside the courtroom that Friday morning, reporters filled the benches as the Pendergrasses stood before the judge for their arraignment hearing. Jalen, 23, appeared first, quiet, expression blank. When asked if he understood the charges, he simply nodded. The judge denied him bond. For Charla Pendergrass, 49, the courtroom atmosphere shifted. The woman accused of helping cover up her son's alleged crime was granted a $5 million cash bond, tethered to a strict GPS monitor. She was forbidden from leaving Michigan or even approaching witnesses connected to the case. The prosecutor argued she had demonstrated a willingness to be deceptive, warning that her actions after the murder, the lies, the phone calls, the moving of the plastic bin, showed a clear intent to obstruct justice. The judge agreed that her involvement warranted the highest possible caution. Both mother and son now stood accused of the same crime, a shared charge of second-degree murder. A bond denied for one, and a bond that could keep the other effectively imprisoned unless millions were paid. Court documents confirmed their next steps were already set in motion. A probable cause conference was scheduled for October 22nd, where both Jalen and Charla were expected to enter not guilty pleas. From there, a preliminary examination would determine whether the case would advance to trial. For London's family, the announcement brought both relief and sorrow. Her father, Cedric Salisbury, spoke briefly after court. He said, "We all knew they did something, now light has been shown." His words echoed across Detroit that day, a reflection of grief, justice, and disbelief all at once. The community that had once searched for London now stood still, their heartbreak replaced by outrage. How could a 17-year-old's life end this way? How could a mother, her boyfriend's own mother, be accused of helping to hide it? Local stations like WXYZ and CBS Detroit reported from the courthouse steps, replaying the details of the case. The missing teen, the SUV, the plastic bin, and the mother who, prosecutors said, chose lies over the truth. It wasn't just another headline. It was a tragedy that touched everyone who had once prayed for London's safe return. Now, with both suspects in custody and the court process unfolding, the legal weight of their actions had finally caught up to them. Jalen in a jail cell without bond. Charla tethered and confined, facing the same murder charge as her son. They claimed innocence. They claimed misunderstanding. But behind every denial stood the same haunting question. If they didn't do it, then who did? And if they did, why? They now sit behind bars, bound by blood, accused by evidence. But one mystery still lingers in the dark corners of this case. What could possibly drive a mother and son to turn love into murder? And who else might still hold the truth? By the time the arrests were made, one question still hung in the air like a fog no one could see through. Why? Why would a young man, barely in his 20s, take the life of a teenage girl who once trusted him? And why would his mother, a woman nearing 50, choose to protect that lie rather than reveal the truth? Detectives and prosecutors have not yet released a single confirmed motive. But through the patterns of communication, the timelines, and the witness statements, theories have begun to take shape. Some investigators quietly suggest jealousy, a relationship that may have soured, an argument that spiraled out of control. Others point toward fear, fear of exposure, of humiliation, of a secret coming to light. Sources close to the case say London and Jalen had been in a relationship that may have become strained. In the weeks before her disappearance, there were signs of emotional distance, messages that hinted at conflict. If that relationship ended badly, the confrontation could have turned violent. And what began as a heated argument may have crossed an irreversible line. But even more complex than Jalen's possible motive is his mother's. Why would Charla Pendergrass, a 49-year-old woman described by neighbors as private, church-going, and composed, become entangled in such a dark and deliberate cover-up? Investigators and psychologists point to one explanation: maternal loyalty taken to the extreme. In psychology, this is known as cognitive dissonance, the mental war between what we know is right and what we feel compelled to do. When a mother's instinct to protect her child collides with the moral law to tell the truth, the result can be denial, rationalization, and in some cases, outright deception. For Charla, prosecutors allege it wasn't a moment of panic, it was a campaign to lie. Those were their words. Phone records, movements, conversations, all suggesting not a spontaneous act of fear, but a carefully maintained deception. A mother who decided, consciously or not, that protecting her son was more important than justice for the girl whose life had been taken. And yet, questions remain. Was there premeditation? Had Jalen planned this in advance? Or was it a sudden act born from rage or panic? What triggered the final confrontation on or around April 5th? Was it betrayal? Was it fear of something London might reveal? Or was it something darker, control, obsession, or desperation? Even now, detectives haven't fully revealed what evidence links those last moments. What was said, what happened in the hours before her death. They know when the lies began, but not precisely when the life ended. And there's another layer still unspoken, the question of whether others may have known something. Was the friend who helped move the bin aware of what was inside? Did anyone else hear the arguments, notice the absence, sense the fear in that house on Whitcomb Street? These are the cracks investigators are still trying to fill. In every true crime case, motive is the shadow that explains everything, and yet, it's often the hardest thing to prove. Because motives aren't just facts. They're emotions, jealousy, loyalty, shame, fear, all colliding inside imperfect people. For now, all the world knows is this: a teenage girl is gone, a mother and son stand accused, and a web of lies has already begun to unravel. But inside that web are pieces still missing, messages unreleased, intentions unspoken, truths yet uncovered. In courtroom testimony yet to come, investigators hope to close every gap and expose every secret, to finally answer not just how London Thomas died, but why. When the truth of London Thomas's death began to surface, Detroit, and the small city of Inkster, felt the impact like a tremor that reached every street corner. A 17-year-old girl, full of promise, gone in a way too cruel to comprehend. And behind the headlines, behind the police tape, stood a grieving family, still waiting for justice, still trying to make sense of how love and trust could end this way. London's relatives, including her father, Cedric Salisbury, have spoken publicly, voices cracked with anger, but grounded in faith. He said, "We all knew they did something, now light has been shown." For the family, that light means accountability, but not closure. Because closure doesn't come with an arrest. It comes with truth, and the truth, they say, is still unfolding. Friends describe London as joyful, funny, and protective, a girl who cared deeply for others, who dreamed of her future. Now her name lives on through hashtags, vigils, and community prayers. Posters that once asked for her safe return now carry her face under a single word: justice. And in Detroit's West Side neighborhoods, people still talk about her, not as a victim, but as a reminder of why young women must be protected, and why silence can never be safety. Legally, the road ahead is long. After their October 17th indictments, both Jalen and Charla Pendergrass now face second-degree murder and evidence tampering charges. The court set a probable cause conference for October 22nd, the first step in a process that could take months, or years, to reach trial. Each side will build its case, prosecutors working to prove intent, involvement, and deception, and defense attorneys searching for doubt. For Jalen, the state must show that London's death wasn't an accident, that it was an intentional act, or one born from reckless disregard for life. For Charla, prosecutors must prove she didn't just panic, but actively work to hide the truth, that her lies and actions after April 5th were deliberate attempts to obstruct justice. Legal experts say that while both face second-degree charges now, those counts can change, depending on evidence, cooperation, or plea negotiations. If one defendant turns on the other, the story could shift completely. And that's what the community now watches for. Whether either Jalen or Charla will finally tell the full truth about what happened inside that Inkster home. But beyond the courtroom, this case exposes deeper wounds, issues that stretch far beyond one family. Domestic violence, teen relationships that hide danger beneath affection, and the terrifying question of how far love, or loyalty, can go before it becomes destruction. In Michigan and across the U.S., advocates are already pointing to London's case as a wake-up call. A moment to talk openly about dating violence, manipulation, and the warning signs young people often ignore or don't recognize. For parents, it's a reminder to ask the hard questions. For friends, it's a call to speak up when something feels wrong. And for the community, it's a wound that hasn't healed. Because London Thomas wasn't just another story on the evening news. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, and her loss has left a silence that still echoes. As for what comes next, the hearings will continue, evidence will be revealed, and more of the truth will emerge. Investigators still hold back certain details. Digital records, forensic results, possible witness statements not yet seen by the public. There's speculation that plea deals could be offered, or that confessions might finally come under the weight of mounting proof. For now, two people sit behind bars. One family grieves in public. And a community waits, for the full story, for justice, and for the answer to the question that still lingers in every heart that knew her. When the truth is finally spoken in court, will it bring peace, or will it reveal an even deeper betrayal? London Thomas was just 17. A bright, kind-hearted girl whose life was only beginning, until love turned fatal and trust was shattered beyond repair. Her story is not just about violence, it's about silence, deception, and the heartbreaking choices that hide behind closed doors. Her death forces us to ask, how far would someone go to protect their own blood? Was this a son's crime, or a mother's cover-up? Who else might still be holding a piece of the truth? What do you believe happened that night? Did Charla orchestrate it all, or was Jalen the primary hand behind London's death? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. If this story moved you, share this video. Because the more eyes that see it, the closer justice may come for London Thomas. In memory of London Thomas, 2008 to 2025. May her light, though dimmed, never fade.